name is Dick Rohr. I grew up on a dairy farm in Paradise, Pennsylvania. Came to Alaska 50 years ago, and most of that time has been spent here on Kodiak Island. It's my home. Raised my family here, my children, my grandchildren, and all of whom thoroughly enjoy the outdoors. And we're fortunate to be able to make our living here in the outdoors. I grew up in Paradise, Pennsylvania, and essentially, though the name is not Paradise, I am living in the paradise of Kodiak Island. Kodiak Island is special, was recognized for the abundance of brown bear and salmon. Years ago, the Kodiak National Wildlife Refuge was established by President FDR in 1941 with four main purposes: to protect a unique feeding and breeding population of the Kodiak brown bear, to protect salmon in their wild habitat, and to protect water quality and quantity on the refuge. Kodiak brown bears have been isolated for at least 7,000 years from any other population of bears. So they're actually identified as a separate subspecies. Name is Ursus arctos mindendorfi. The Kodiak bears are unique to Kodiak and have some a bit different configurations from other coastal bears in Alaska. Of course, the size, the Kodiak bear is known around the world for its large size. And the main difference between a Kodiak bear and a coastal Alaska Peninsula bear would be the configuration of the skull. The Kodiak bear has developed a wider skull in proportion to the length. For those of us who are familiar with them, we can take one look at a skull and know whether it was from Kodiak or the Alaska Peninsula. The reason the coastal bears are larger than the interior grizzly bear is because of the abundance of feed. Not only salmon, our bears graze in the spring of the year. They'll be grazing in the alpine, just actually look like a herd of cattle grazing. Then as the salmon begin into the streams, the bears will move off the mountain down into the salmon streams. Many people don't realize how important berries and sedges are. Berries primarily here on the refuge would be salmon berries, but more importantly than salmonberry is the red-berried elder. And those grow in abundance from sea level on up to the 700-800 foot elevation on the mountains. And we have a longer period of time when the bears are feeding compared to an interior grizzly bear. Our bears don't have to travel very far. In different research projects that have been done, there's been a number of bears with radio collars over the years in different studies, and we don't have record of any of the bears that have gone from one end of the island to the other end of the island. Kodiak Island is home to all 5 species of Pacific salmon. The pink salmon is the most abundant in every little stream on the island. There's a good number of sockeye, and right now we're particularly interested in the Coho, which are a later run, come into the streams in the fall. And then in the middle of the summer there are chum salmon as well. In addition to that, there are plenty of dolly varden, which are an Arctic char. in the river. Some rivers have some rainbows, and the location where we are right now have a few steelhead as well. Alaska is very careful to protect our natural run of salmon statewide. And so to do that, for one thing, a number of years ago, we passed a law to prohibit salmon farming in our waters in Alaska. And so we're very protective of our native runs, and the salmon that we will be fishing are all native run fish. There are no hatchery fish, there are no stock fish. These are all natural native run fish. So let's talk some about the Coho salmon, which we locally commonly refer to as silver salmon. Beautiful, bright fish, fresh from the sea, and those are an important game fish in Alaska. Not as numerous as many of the other species for commercial interests. So sport fishermen, like myself, and providing opportunity for other guests who come from around the world, our focus is silver, bright Coho salmon, fresh from the sea, and we're fishing waters that are immediately adjacent to the sea. Our special location where we are today, every time the tide changes, every time we get a new high tide, there will be a few fresh fish come into the river, into the lagoon, and so we target those fish, and they're so bright they still have sea lice attached, and I might add they're quite good eating as well. My family, my son and I, and our extended family have operations at two different locations. The main camp, the Coho there, are larger than what they are at the location we'll talk about here in a moment. And we allow both spin casting and fly fishing. It's quite, the water there is quite different than here. There's more water, stronger water. For whatever reason, their Coho grow to be a bit larger there than what they do here. But my special place I located some 20 years ago, and because of its unique qualities, I personally decided that I would only offer fly fishing opportunity, barbless hooks, all catch and release, with the exception of few fish that we eat. And there are steelhead that come into this system as well. Further reason for me to restrict the effort to fly fishing with barbless hooks to make sure we don't damage the steelhead. And the other thing that I decided to do was to keep the operation very small. We take a maximum of 4 clients at one time. Sometimes there are only 2 guests here. And for the season, which is basically the month of September, I may only take 10, at the very most 12 clients. They're normally here for 6 or 7 days of fishing. And the other thing that's somewhat unique at this location, we have to use a helicopter for access for safety reasons. The refuge is established so that we have no roads on the refuge. There are no established roads, no four-wheelers permitted. We're not permitted to land helicopters on the refuge. So it's quite a unique spot. I was fortunate to find the spot and offer this great once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to our guests. The bear population on Kodiak Island is probably, we think, as high as it's ever been, probably in the number of 4,000 bears island-wide. And in Kodiak, as a community, we focus on living with bears, being respectful of bears, understanding that bears can in fact kill people. But we have the opportunity to view bears in a natural setting, and especially at our other camp during the summer months, late August and September, There are a tremendous number of bears that focus on the salmon. And our focus of bear viewing is to view in a natural setting bears in their natural habitat. We don't build platforms to stand on. We don't build trails. We only access by bear trails. We're very careful to understand the bears and to safely guide our clients. Those who want to simply come and view bears, and some clients do that. We view in such a manner to have as little negative impact on the bears as possible. We don't go stalk bears to get photographs. We find a location and we sit and let the bears come to us. Sometimes they come quite close if they're comfortable with that, but we want them in their natural setting. I want to tell you a little bit about my philosophy of facilities in the wilderness. I'm not interested in five-star lodge facilities where we need generators and lots of amenities. We offer a service to folks who want to experience wilderness in its pristine setting. And that means not listening to diesel generators run to provide electricity. It means not getting a shower for a week. It means washing your hair in a basin. But it helps us to have very minimal footprint of impact on the habitat.
It's pretty isolated, pretty exclusive. There's only myself and Susan fishing here. The guys that went out, there are only 3 guys fishing before us. This river's not seeing a lot of anglers, so it's a perfect place to come, get away from it, and get to fish in peace and quiet, basically.
I've been here a day and a half, and this is the start of my second full day, and I've already had 31 salmon. They are incredible. They fight like crazy. I'm playing this fishing by winding down and then pulling back, trying to get it into me. I'm using a 9-foot 8-weight rod. It's a Helios 2 from Orvis, and I've got an Orvis reel on, which is a Hydros reel, and they seem to be working perfectly together.
So the tackle using, I've got a single-handed rod rated 9 for an 8-weight and an 8-weight forward line, using very short leader of about 5 or 6 feet of either 15 to 20 pound breaking strain fluorocarbon. Finding the fish are not leader shy, but if you go much longer on the leader, you'll find that you get quite a few that you sort of foul hook in the dorsal fin, where the shorter leader you tend to hook them in the mouth. The rod I'm using is an Orvis Helios Covert with the Hydros SL reel and the steelhead salmon fly line that actually matches it perfectly. It's a well-balanced piece of kit, and it's coping with these Coho quite well. I'd fish up to about 18 pounds on it, so it's tested the tackle, and it's certainly up to the job. The tide's basically low at the moment. We're waiting for the tide to turn and the next flush of fish to come up the river. There's been 1 or 2 that have been in since the last tide, but as it drops and actually hangs like this, the fishing tends to go a little bit slower and a little bit less frantic. In terms of flies, using a mixture between clouds and minnows to egg-sucking leech type patterns. The better colours that we've been working on at the moment are Chartreuse bright yellow. At the moment I'm fishing something which is a real concoction of bright pink, yellow with a purple tail and a little bit of flash in it. That took quite a few fish yesterday. This morning, a yellow and pink clouser. So basically, if you get a few takes and then you stop, it's time to change your fly just to see what these fish are reacting to. Yeah, fish on.
It's a lovely September morning. It was very, very cold when we woke up this morning. But we woke up to 3 bears in the river and we were watching them with our cup of coffee, which is absolutely fantastic. These fish are like bars of silver, the fresh run from the sea, which is just down to my right, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm trying to play the fish on the reel, but it takes a while to get that line taut, and you need to keep your line taut. We don't want to lose this fish. It's nice to be able to use a single-handed rod. When I fished in Scotland, I was using dual-handed rods and they seem a lot bigger and heavier for me. This single-handed rod is perfect for here. There's no rush in these fish. They've got loads of energy. I'm going to move backwards towards the shore to bring this salmon in. Bring it to the beach area so we can release it nicely.
Amazing.
So in terms of presentation of the fly, it's really depended on the time and the tide. When the tide was coming in really fast, we were just happy to drift the flies around, and they were taking on the dead drift. But if you're not getting a reaction from the fish, then a couple of quick strips, figure of 8, or just put some movement into the fly just to actually stimulate a take. And in terms of making sure you set the hook, then I'm not just lifting the rod, I'm actually pulling with my left hand as well as a bit of a strip strike. These fish have got really hard bony mouths, and that just helps set the hook. And it's important for me to say that these hooks are barbless. Once you hook these things, be ready for them just to basically cartwheel and just try and head straight back for the sea. I've had 2 or 3 take me right onto the back end. The fly line's about 35 yards. So I've had 40 to 50 yards of fly line and backing out at one point. These fish are really fit. I'm just looking straight down river now. Sue's fishing down there, and the river just snakes round, and then it's actually on the beach. So I think I must be about 250, 300 yards just up from the river mouth. Had a walk down there yesterday, and there was about a dozen seals out there. Also trying to catch the fish as they came in. So yeah, these fish, when you're getting them, they're fresh run, they're silver, they've got sea lice on them. So these fish are about as fresh as you're going to get. They're just absolutely full of energy, full of life, and I've not had better fights anywhere else, in all honesty. And the number of fish that are coming up when the tide runs is phenomenal. This is excellent fishing. I've never had so many good quality fish in one session. Just down over the beach, there are 2 or 3 juvenile bald eagles along with the parents that come soaring over the top over the camp. As the flow's backing up here, if you notice, I'm now casting upstream. And this is actually producing more fish when the tide's holding and there's no real downstream current. By casting upstream and stripping it down, seems to be much more effective on these high tide conditions. Those tufts of grass overhang the water and the fish are pushing up right up that far bank. They're literally within a foot of the bank. There's one just top there as well. Absolutely fresh as a daisy. So this is a Coho, as you can see, a little bit of pink colouring to it, but it is fresh off the sea. There's a sea lice on the back here. Sue's just going to take the fly out of his mouth. As you can see, it's a pink and purple bunny leech, basically, with a pink gold head on it. Look at that, you tell it's a cockfish. Look at the kype on that. This fish must be 15, 16 pounds in weight.